The camera is live. The audience is laughing. But something in the room suddenly feels off. On a late-night stage built for jokes, one unexpected question shifts the mood in real time. Subscribe to The Truth Narrator, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. This moment involves Natalie Portman, one of Hollywood's most respected actors, and Stephen Colbert, the sharp-tongued but thoughtful host of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Natalie Portman is known for control, precision, and intelligence. Her interviews are usually calm, articulate, and carefully measured. Stephen Colbert is known for satire, but also for pushing conversations just far enough to reveal something real. That night, the interview began normally. Polite laughter, familiar rhythm, a relaxed exchange that looked like every other late-night appearance. But live television has no safety net, and when the conversation drifted toward a sensitive area of Portman's career and public commentary, the atmosphere subtly changed. No shouting, no scandal, just a pause that felt longer than it should have. And in live television, pauses speak louder than words. Stay with this story, because what happened next wasn't explosive. It was quieter, and that's exactly why people noticed. By the time Natalie Portman sat down across from Stephen Colbert, she had already spent decades navigating fame differently than most stars. Harvard-educated, selective with roles, careful with public statements. She had built a reputation on thoughtfulness, not spectacle. Stephen Colbert, on the other hand, walks a line every night. He blends humor with politics, curiosity with challenge. His interviews often feel friendly, until they don't. Especially when topics move beyond movies and into identity, power, or public responsibility. In the days leading up to this appearance, Portman had been speaking openly in other interviews about creative ownership, public expectations, and the pressure placed on women in Hollywood. Nothing controversial, but deeply personal. As the interview progressed, Colbert shifted tone. He framed a question around public criticism, one that referenced how celebrities are perceived when they speak out. The wording was careful, but the implication lingered. Portman didn't interrupt. She didn't deflect with humor. She paused. Her expression changed just enough for the audience to feel it. Her posture tightened. The studio laughter faded faster than usual. Colbert noticed too. He leaned back slightly, giving space, but the moment had already landed. Live TV doesn't allow rewinds. And this was unfolding in real time. What followed wasn't an argument. It was something more uncomfortable. Silence. The exchange ended without a dramatic exit. Natalie Portman did not storm off the set. The interview continued. But something had shifted permanently in that moment, and viewers sensed it immediately. Colbert adjusted. His tone softened. The questions became safer. The rhythm returned, but not completely. Anyone watching closely could tell this wasn't the same conversation anymore. After the broadcast, clips circulated online. Not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. Comment sections filled with viewers pointing out the pause, the look, the shift in energy. Media outlets analyzed the moment frame by frame, careful not to exaggerate, but unable to ignore it. This is how live television exposes truth, not through chaos, but through cracks. For Natalie Portman, the moment reinforced her image as someone who chooses silence over spectacle. For Stephen Colbert, it showed the risk every live interviewer takes when pushing a conversation just one step further than expected. No scandal followed. No apologies were issued. But the moment stayed. Because sometimes, the most revealing confrontations on live TV aren't loud. They're quiet. And they happen right in front of millions, unedited, unfiltered, and impossible to erase. If you value calm, serious breakdowns of real moments like this, subscribe to The Truth Narrator, like this video, and share your perspective in the comments. Before Natalie Portman ever stepped onto the late-night stage that evening, the context around her public image already mattered. By that point in her career, Natalie Portman was no longer just a film star. She was widely known as an actor who spoke carefully, avoided viral soundbites, and chose substance over spectacle. Her interviews were typically composed, thoughtful, and controlled. She rarely allowed conversations to drift into personal or political territory unless she had clearly decided to go there. Across the desk sat Stephen Colbert, a host whose strength lies in smart tension. On The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Colbert often blends humor with probing questions, especially when guests are known for intellect or strong opinions. His audience expects wit, but also honesty. Leading up to this appearance, Portman had been promoting her work while also reflecting publicly on issues like creative control, representation, and the expectations placed on public figures. None of this was controversial, but it did place her in a category of celebrity who is often asked to explain more than just their art. As the interview began, everything followed the familiar late-night formula. Light jokes, comfortable pacing, mutual respect. The audience was relaxed. Colbert appeared playful. Portman appeared engaged but reserved. Then the conversation subtly shifted. Colbert framed a question that moved away from film and toward perception. How celebrities are received when they speak thoughtfully instead of entertainingly. The question itself was measured, but it carried weight. It invited reflection rather than laughter. That was the moment the temperature in the room changed. Not because of confrontation, but because of anticipation. Viewers watching live could sense that this was no longer a routine interview. Something personal was being approached, carefully but directly. And in live television, even careful questions can land unpredictably. The pause that followed didn't come out of nowhere. It was built. The moment arrived quietly. The studio lights stayed bright. The cameras kept rolling. There was no cut, no music cue, no commercial break to soften what happened next. Stephen Colbert finished the question and leaned back in his chair. Not dramatically, just enough to signal that the floor was now hers. Natalie Portman looked at him, then briefly toward the audience, and then back again. She didn't answer right away. On live television, silence stretches differently. A second feels like 5. A pause becomes a statement. Her expression shifted, not to anger, but to calculation. Her posture straightened. Her hand stopped moving. The audience didn't laugh. They waited. Portman began to respond slowly, choosing each word with care. Her voice stayed calm, but the warmth from earlier was gone. What she said wasn't confrontational. It was measured, controlled, and firm, clarifying her position without expanding it, setting a boundary without announcing one. Colbert listened closely. He didn't interrupt. He nodded once, subtly, acknowledging the tone had changed. The exchange lasted less than a minute, but the energy in the room had already transformed. This was live, unedited, exactly as it happened. And when Portman finished speaking, there was another brief pause, shorter this time, but just as noticeable. The conversation moved on, but the moment stayed. Because sometimes, the most revealing live TV confrontations aren't about raised voices or walk-offs. They're about restraint, about what someone chooses not to give the camera. If you're watching closely, you realize this wasn't just an interview. It was a line being drawn in real time in front of millions. Stay with the truth, narrator, because what happened immediately after this moment changed how the rest of the interview was handled and how viewers remembered it long after the broadcast ended.